Magatte, thank you for spending a little time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to get to know a little more about the work that you're doing in Senegal. Could you tell me just a little bit of how you got started?
On the school?
On the school in particular, that's right.
So basically the school started more as an after-school program. And we started as an after-school program because there is a lot of things to figure out first. How you have to, again, maybe to put some context into it, the children we're working with are the children of our workers, and we happen to have established ourselves in a rural area of Senegal, far away from the capital city. And it's very important to me to try and provide an education of quality education to children that normally come from poor families.
Sure.
I feel like there's no reason why the poverty cycle should just keep on,
grinding away.
repeating itself.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm hoping and thinking that with this, by educating the children, we give a job to the parents, upstream, and downstream we educate these children for the future. So I feel like if we do that, then we take care of it. So we started as an after-school program, and I've always wanted to make sure that we would be relying on the Socratic method. And the reason why I felt the need to start a school, despite all the other schools that are around. And by the way, where we are, mostly what you have is the normal public school. I always want to be sympathetic, to public schools. I know people are doing what they can all over the place. There are teachers trying their best. Children are going where they can. The parents are putting them where they can. So I just felt there was something, that needed to be done.
Right.
And why did I want something different? Because I feel like it's very important that we try to foster a culture in which young people are going to have a sense of critical thinking and independent thinking. Insofar as these are supposed to be the leaders of tomorrow, these children are going to be the ones, hopefully, one day taking care of us. They're going to be making big-time decisions for my country, for how our healthcare is run, for everything, if we have it right. So I really want to make sure that, we have the best people doing that.
That's right.
And it starts now. So that's why I wanted to create my own school, because I felt like with what I have seen of the Socratic method, so you have children who are home, their parents only speak Wolof, and they're supposed to be learning French at school. Yet, so you can imagine when they go home and they have issues, parents can't really help them. Parents don't have money to pay for a tutor to help them either. So you can see how this thing is replicating itself. So what we have found actually is that the Socratic method is one of the best tools for us to help them gain more French vocabulary, right? So we are bettering their French by reading these texts and then talking about them in the Socratic way. So that when a child sees, for example, dying of laughter in French. So that's where we get because of the way we ask the questions, then they get to understand that dying of laughter, this concept, this notion, it kind of means this in my own language, and deeper than that, this is really what it means. Because we ask them, have you ever been in a situation where you were dying of laughter? Or have you seen somebody who is dying of laughter? And you see, and all of a sudden you see their little mind going, and we just find it's a really good way to learn a language.
So where did you first encounter the Socratic method?
I first encountered it through Michael. I remember the first time I was with him, it was a little bit over 10 years ago, when I knew he was doing something like this. Obviously, he has his book called The Habit of Thought, and it all sounded nice to me, but I was just like, actually, I will tell you when I first encountered it. So it's when he came to, because I was going to go into this, there are two occurrences where it started to be. One is me going through it without even knowing I was going through it, because by now he lives his life like that. So I remember the first date we had, I invited him over for dinner, and then I remember being so upset because my brain was really literally hurting. It's only later that I found out, because I think what he was doing is something I was not used to. This art of conversing where it's all questions. Like there's no set, like how when people talk most of the time, it's like affirmatives everywhere. And then anytime you say something, the person is asking you a question about, well, oh, really? And what exactly in that? Or, all of these questions, and your mind, you realize at least at me, I realized my mind was not used to that. So that's the first time I encountered it. I didn't know that's what it was. But I can tell you I had a headache. And I really complained to him because I was like, this is really
hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work, exactly. So I experienced it myself first, and obviously since then, it, no longer headache. Actually, it's the other way around. I have no more patience for small talks. I don't have patience for people just yakking about who knows what, and I have no patience for people who are not being thoughtful or thinking through what they say.
Right.
So, and then another occurrences that I will never forget is one day he took me on a trip with him to Pennsylvania, where he was going to be, kind of guiding a group of homeschoolers. So, and that's also the first time I heard that there was such a thing as homeschoolers. What is this thing? In Germany, where I was
right?
partly educated, Germany, homeschooling is illegal, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what is this? So I went with him, and so I will never forget, there was this table, and I think maybe 10 or so children, anywhere from, I think what the youngest one was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and the older one was maybe 12, 14, I don't know, something like that. But a little bit of a gap.
Range. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's right.
And they sat around there and they were discussing this idea of, is courage a habit or not? And the little 6-year-old was holding her ground as anybody else. It was fascinating. And I remember my first thought was, I felt like these kids are not kids. They felt almost, the feeling you would have if a baby crawled towards you. So everything that your mind expects. It's a baby. But all of a sudden, the baby opens his mouth or her mouth and start talking to you in the most elaborate language you've ever heard and discussing the most, sophisticated ideas you've ever heard.
Sure.
You would be freaked out, wouldn't you?
Right.
That's
Shocking.
exactly how I felt. And I was like, that's what you do. And it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I could have no rest until I could bring it back home.
So let's go back home for a moment to Senegal. And you said this is out in the country a bit,
Yeah.
away from the capital city. But this is where you have effectively started a business,
Yes,
a corporation.
yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So we have established a lab in this little town called Magatte, and basically it's a cosmetics lab that we have created from scratch. Because once again, when I looked at the few other labs around, I was not really happy with what they do or the way they do things. And again, remember, we have a whole economy to build at all levels. So even if there were some good labs, there's still room to make better ones.
Sure.
So the lab, it's for a company, the cosmetic line is called Skin is Skin.
Skin is Skin.
And Skin is Skin is basically it's a little lip balm on a mission to fight discrimination. It's soon going to be joined by a hand balm. But the whole purpose of a brand is really to help people undo the habit of bias. And the lip balm's job in that is to remind them to switch their minds on. Whenever they use it, switch your mind on, because when you're not switched on, you let all of your biases run crazy, because the back of your head is where they live. So unless you're really here with me and really paying attention, they manage everything. And the other way it fights bias is we take 50% of our profits and we give it to organizations that are working on fighting discrimination as well. Wow. And for me, where Africa comes in place is obviously the fact that we manufacture everything back home using the best ingredients that my country has to offer, and really they're also offering a chance of independence to the workers who are mostly women. And even there too, in doing Skin is Skin back home, we are contributing to challenging some biases and discrimination that people have about what type of products can really be made successessly at high level and standards in Africa. We are really challenging people's minds of what is it that Africans are able to produce back home.
Sure.
And so by just being, we hope to also stop you on your track of what you usually of people usually stereotyping us into what we can do or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, where did the idea come from? Because obviously a lot of moving parts today. And how many working for you at present?
Well, right now we're 5. We're a team of 5.
Yep. So in terms of the
in Senegal.
Yeah.
The U.S. will.
How did the idea come to you that this was going to be the way you would make this a project that would both employ your fellow nationals, but also bring and enrich the nation? Because as you said, you're looking to reform. You're looking to see reform within the country that eventually you would hope would sweep the continent. So
That's right.
when did this idea first arrive in your own thinking?
The idea of starting it in Senegal
Yeah.
or doing it to fight bias?
Well, no, the idea of bringing it back to Senegal,
Yes.
right? Because you mentioned your
Yes.
background of
Yes.
training in Germany
Yeah,
and
yeah,
in
yeah.
Europe.
I think wanting and really engaging in building businesses in Africa, in Senegal especially, has been with me since 2003 or so.
Okay.
And what happened that year is a year, right? It's the year where I had my own little, 2003 was a pivotal year in my life. Two major things happened. One is I had this epiphany moment, this existential crisis moment, driving down Big Sur one day and just really, all of a sudden, finding myself completely no longer able to reconcile this life of abundance that I was given in the U.S., although I worked really hard for it, but it's a life of abundance everywhere you look. And reconciling this life of abundance with the life of scarcity that I left back home.
Sure.
And so, for the long, I think a lot of us in the diaspora, kind of, whether we see it or not, whether we pay attention or not, whether we're trying to be conscious of it or not, I really do think it's there, lingering at the bottom of our stomachs, and this frustration of why me, the same person, I'm able to be so productive over here, and when I go home, I'm no longer able to be productive, and watch what's going on around. When you're like, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way because you see it everywhere, somewhere else.
And you've lived it.
And you've lived it, absolutely. So at that right moment, I had this moment of it's just something just sweet. Something just happened in my head, and it was quite violent, to tell you the truth. And so at that moment, I remember making an agreement between myself and the universe. That from here on, I only want that every breath that I take, I want it to be going towards the betterment of Africa. And remember, back then, I really did not understand economics the way I understand it today. I understand economics the way most people understand it today. And it's like big companies steal everything from small companies. Is business even, I was already at, trade is good, but aid is better. See, aid is good, but trade is better. Aid is good. And today, I'm like, no, aid is not good, unless you're talking about humanitarian aid. So it was just, I made that, but that day, I didn't know anything. But all I knew is that from here on, my only purpose on this earth would be to see how I can contribute to bringing prosperity to Africa. I had no idea what I was hoping, what I was,
signing
wishing
on for. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. So what steps did you have to take to get to the place where you could launch a business? Because that's a major undertaking.
It's a major undertaking. So once I did that, later that year, I got married, and to my first husband, who is now who passed away, 15 years ago now. But he had wanted to go to Africa because he was from France, and he was just like, so we went back and we discovered that this beverage that I really loved, hibiscus, which is a national drink, was kind of starting to disappear back then because, Coca-Cola, Fanta, Pepsi, people are all about status markers. And unfortunately, in countries like that, a status marker is all about what beverage, if you're somebody, you drink Western brands. Yeah. And the poor people, which is who are the most at the
vast majority,
them, they're also busy buying knockoff or knockout.
Yeah, knockoff
products
that's right.
coming from India, China, and Iran and places like that.
Yeah.
And in the middle, our indigenous products are getting squeezed. So when I saw that, I was like, this is ridiculous. I really want to turn this around. And so this concept of criticize by creating is really what I followed. If you're not happy with your beverages disappearing, with the women who used to grow the hibiscus finding themselves into really horrible positions of having to leave their countryside to move to the city to try to find work, over there a lot of them end up in prostitution. Even this trafficking, sex trafficking, and everything that people talk about, I'm like, have you ever traced it back to what it is? Do you think it's just like somebody who can take care of all of their needs, who one day wakes up and says, oh, I'm going to sell my daughter?
Sure.
No one does that.
No.
It's people who have to deal with extreme choices, and I don't even call it a choice sometimes. So even there, I think it's great that we try to fight, sex trafficking, but it's like, again, it's humanitarian aid, right? Okay, we need to stop. We need to make sure that no more people are sold right now at this point. But to me, that's the that's the immediate, almost like humanitarian aid. Let's stop this bleeding. But stopping the bleeding there, putting the Band-Aid there, it's just that, it's a Band-Aid. How many more are getting ready to be sold or to be trafficked? What do we do about that? What caused that? And I feel too often we only sit at the second generation level of issues. We don't go to the root. So anyway, so here, with putting two and two together, I'm like, on one end, I have my culture disappearing because people think, like anything Western is better. On the other end, I have people who are dying at sea trying to get to Europe to get a job. I'm like, how do I fix this? What is a solution? That's when I thought about consumer brands. And why consumer brands? Because consumer brands have an amazing power of establishing any culture it wants. Brands are so powerful when it comes to culture, anything. And then, so consumer brands, that's why. And then obviously, just as any company, if it thrives, you get to employ more and more people. So that's why I wanted to do it home. So that's how my whole idea of, I'm gonna create a business, but the business would have to be based in Africa so I can employ people back home. And when the first company, the beverage company, we put back to work 4,000 women. So here we know it's gonna grow too. I mean, things grow.
Sure.
And so, but what I have discovered along the journey, because each time we would have a US side, which is usually in charge of product development, marketing, sales, all of that. And then the Africa side is in charge of supply chain. In this case, we're also manufacturing there.
Production.
So you observe these two sister companies, you compare them, and it's day and night in terms of even what it takes to legally register each one of them. In the US, it's as if you want to set up an LLC, it takes 20 minutes or shorter, depending on how fast you are of a typer, of a typer, and a few $100s done, and it in no time. A few $100 for the license with the state, but $20 really. It's only $20 for that part. So anyway, it's just, and then compare that to these other places where, despite a lot of them saying, oh, we have a one-stop shop and 24-hour business registration. No, it's not true, because you still have to deal with countless agencies. Countless agencies have to be part of this for you to get your paperwork. In some places, it can take up to a year of somebody's time and up to a year of somebody's salary. That's insane. And then the labor laws are such that you really have no flexibility. I think any small business person hearing me speak here, and by the way, just for the sake of peace, I'm only talking about small and medium-sized enterprises, which, by the way, is the backbone of any healthy economy. Absolutely. We need all of these mom and pop. I'm talking about pizza shops. I'm talking about small, T-shirt printers, employing 10, boutique 15 people, 5 people. People who are making small food companies. Right. All of it we take for granted, but those are the backbones of any healthy society. So when you think that for us, for the same back home or counterpart, it's just like swimming through molasses to get anything done. So that's when I started to be like, wait a second, this kind of doesn't make sense. And then I started digging as to, you just start with a simple observation. In Socrates, that's what happens. Simple observation. What the heck? I'm seeing this here. That doesn't make any sense. And why is it this way? And then you eventually start, and then before you know it, you're going way back into history as to actually where did these tariffs come from, and why is it that I can't really freely engage with one of my employees? Why is it that the state has to tell me that depending on what my company is, which sector my company fits in, I'm going to need, my employees are going to be falling into this category, and within that category, depending if they have this degree, that degree, then there's these different scales of pays and all of that. And I mean, it's almost like there is no freedom. The state is telling me what to do. Why? And then I was asking to myself, why is it that here it's over here, but in the US, it's free will employment? We sign a contract, we agree on what we agree on, and that's done. Why? And then I started looking, and what do I find? That this convention in Senegal that we have with between employees and workers, for people in my field, that dates from 1957, before the independence. So no one ever thought about even changing this. So we're being ruled. It's just carried over. And then from there, where did that come from? And so I just kept going back into history. And then all of a sudden, what am I finding, though? All of a sudden, what I'm going deep and deep and deep. I'm finding that at some point, us indigenous Africans, before the white man set foot in Africa, it turns out that I actually had way more freedom to trade with others than actually Americans even here today do. The chief, which in a way represented the government, the chief had no say. in what two people can do with each other in terms of business, where I get to go, not get to go, the price I do. I had freedom. So going deep, I found that us Africans, originally in our original state, and indigenously speaking, we were practicing the free market and we were practicing free enterprise before the Western world could even put a name on it.
Sure.
That was fascinating. And so I was like, then what happened? Well, what happened is somewhere along the way between fellow Africans confusing the nastiness of colonialism with, this word capitalism that has been taken over by, I don't know what. I even try to avoid saying it because it's so corrupt. The word is so corrupt. People don't understand it. They think they understand, but they don't understand it. So, but bottom line is, along the way, we sold us the Marxist views and the statist views were basically, which are foreign to us, were brought to us, and somehow we adopted them, and worse yet, we convinced ourselves that it was ours, indigenously speaking. And I think what has been going on is we've been confusing the fact that Africans we are really about the community, right? So when you hear about the Ubuntu, I am because we are. So people confuse that with, we must be socialist. We Africans think that we must be social, and the rest of the world will say, and then they're like, you indigenously speaking are socialist. I'm like, no. Welfare that we provide to each other. We have our own system of welfare. I make money, but then I share with my family.
Sure.
See, that's very different. So we have been practicing free enterprise to create value and wealth, and then we can turn around and freely decide to share and partake some of that, some of that wealth with our families and our communities. You see?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. The interesting thing is how you have brought education into this mix, because you recognize, and I think again it's almost a truism to say we need to educate the next generation.
Absolutely.
Of course we do.
Yeah.
But much of what you have picked up on is a kind of cosmopolitan reading, right?
Yeah.
Having been here, having been in Europe, having been in the States, and now trying to bring the best of ideas back home to Senegal.
That's right.
So that you can begin to see that next generation eyes opened to the wider world. As you see it, how will education fundamentally prepare that next generation of Senegalese to really take stock and then move forward, right, to advance their nation? What are the 2 or 3 things that you would like to see instilled within those young people so that they have a chance just as you've had a chance?
Absolutely. So what I want to instill in themselves is, I think it starts, number one, it's this idea that we have in Senegal. We have a saying for it, it's Gumsabop. Gumsabop means believe in yourself. And I mean in the most profound sense of the term, of the concept. Believe in yourself, it's like we're one of these people who believe, I believe that we got sent out to the world the way in a perfect way, in its imperfection, right? But it is right. Whatever we've hit is right. And along with Michael, we believe that there are 7 billion geniuses. This idea that each one of us came to this earth with one thing that no one else has. And that one thing is actually a part of a solution to the human condition. So in a very selfish way, I want to bring it out because there is in that person a part of a solution to my condition. So it would be foolish for us not to our condition.
That's right.
So so this idea of Gumsabop, to really always remember to believe in yourself. My grandma was very good and big about that with me, and it really helped me tremendously when I went to Germany, because that's where I first went. When she said, you're going to go to this place where they speak a different language, where they don't even look like you anything, and you might be, and they have been going to school, you've never been going to school, but all of that is things that the different language they speak, it's still a language spoken by humans, and you're human. The skin color, different skin color they have, it's still just skin. And skin is skin, and they're human. You're human, and even the fact that they go to school, a school is something that little humans do, and you're a little human, so you'll be just fine. You'll figure it out. So she just said, you have a right to be impressed, but never the right to be intimidated. So I think that's what I mean by that, because especially the 21st century and beyond, we know one thing: change is going to be the one thing we know for sure. And it's going to be something that's going to happen faster and faster. So what you want is people who are able to look at it and feel, this is interesting. Okay, I get it. But feel impressed by it, if you want, but don't be intimidated by it. And just say, whatever is being thrown at me, I got the ability to overcome.
And adapt. Yep.
So this belief of I can do it. And then second, the tools to really be able to do it. And there, it's really this ability to learn how to learn. Because with change, what I tell you today, what I supposedly teach you today about one topic is totally going to be challenged and changed, maybe not even relevant by the time you walk out of this school doors. So why would I be sitting there trying to teach you things that are going to become obsolete as soon as you walk out and you're left with no ability to face whatever is going to be behind those doors? So the safer bet is actually to teach you how to learn anything you might need to learn whenever you identify it. So, and that's what I love about this method. It's because it's teaching kids how to think and how to learn, so that as they continue, as the lifelong learners that we wish them to be, they can just face anything that comes at them with a very serene attitude, because they believe in themselves, and also they have a tool to face it and come up with whatever they need to come up with. And then I think third is also instilling in them a sense of profound compassion for fellow man, and man as in fellow human.
That's right.
You know, and so that's another thing that I love about the type of education we have, because we really try to go into making our children think about this idea of what's right and what's wrong, right? I feel that, and this is something that I really want to make sure that we integrate, and that's why I'm loving what Michael is doing with his school here in the U.S., because in the U.S. we have gotten to the point that in the name of, hey, let everybody do whatever they want, in the end it seems like we're not going to stand for anything anymore, because we're trying to put people with different value system into a room and say, we're going to remove all the values so that we all are a blank slate. I think that's totally wrong. So I am really interested in making sure that, yes, the children are going to be people who believe in themselves, people who have the ability to learn so that they can figure out anything they're going to need to figure out whenever they're going to need to figure it out. And also, as they make their decisions, that they always go for the decision that's not only good for themselves, but it is also good for their communities. You see, back in traditional African ways, that's what we did. We always said the individual is super free. You need radical freedom. But you exercise freedom at the individual level, but we draw the line where what you do as an individual affects the community or not. And you see, to me, that's a good contract.
Sure it is.
That's a good contract. So through these texts that we're reading, that are getting them into even is what was it? Is courage a habit or whatever? As we read texts like that, children are starting to think about what even courage is. Do I want to be a courageous person or not? So these texts really, and the way we do it, really help us allow the children to really have space for morality building in themselves. Again, I'm not here to tell them what's right or what's wrong, but I just want to know that they have been equipped with the right way to address what's right or what's wrong, and always make that part of their decision. And not just because this technology is so great, we're going to release it. We could do anything we want, but what about the ethics behind everything that we're going to do?
Sure. That's right. We have to ask those questions.
We do.
And these questions transcend boundaries, which is really a delight for us to see and to hear.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time
Thank
this
you.
morning. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much. Appreciate it.